of the Holy Graal. From King Arthur, Tales of the Round Table, edited by Andrew Lang. The Quest of the Holy Grail. This is a mysterious part of the adventures of King Arthur's knights. We must remember that parts of these stories are very old. They were invented by the heathen Welsh, or by the ancient Britons, from whom the Welsh are descended, and by the old pagan Irish, who spoke Gaelic, a language not very unlike Welsh. Then these ancient stories were translated by French and other foreign writers, and Christian beliefs and chivalrous customs were added in the French romances. And finally, the French was translated into English about the time of Edward IV by Sir Thomas Malory, who altered as he pleased. The story of the Holy Grail in this book is mostly taken from Malory, but partly from the High History of the Holy Grail, translated by Dr. Sebastian Evans from an old French book. What was the Holy Grail? In the stories, it is the holy vessel used by our Lord and brought to Britain by Joseph of Arimathea. But in the older heathen Irish stories, there is a mysterious vessel of a magical sort, full of miraculous food, and probably the French writers of the romances confused this with the sacred vessel brought from the Holy Land. On account of the sins of men, this relic was made invisible, but now and then it appeared, borne by angels or floating in a heavenly light. The knights, against King Arthur's wish, made a vow to find it, and gave up their duties of redressing wrongs and keeping order to pursue the beautiful vision. But most of them, for their sins, were unsuccessful, like Sir Launcelot, and the Round Table was scattered, and the kingdom was weakened by the neglect of ordinary duties in the search for what could never be gained by mortal men. This appears to be the moral of the story, if it has any moral. But the stories are confused, almost like a dream, though it is a beautiful dream. 1. How the king went on pilgrimage, and his squire was slain in a dream. Now the king was minded to go on a pilgrimage, and he agreed with the queen that he would set forth to seek the holy chapel of St. Augustine, which is in the White Forest, and may only be found by adventure. Much he wished to undertake the quest alone, but this the queen would not suffer, and to do her pleasure he consented that a youth, tall and strong of limb, should ride with him as his squire. Chouse was the youth's name, and he was son to Gawain the Uter. "Lie within tonight," commanded the king, "and take heed that my horse be saddled at break of day, and my arms ready." "At your pleasure, sir," answered the youth, whose heart rejoiced because he was going alone with the king. As night came on, all the knights quitted the hall, but Chouse the squire stayed where he was, and would not take off his clothes or his shoes, lest sleep should fall on him, and he might not be ready when the king called him. So he sat himself down by the great fire, but in spite of his will, sleep fell heavily on him, and he dreamed a strange dream. In his dream it seemed that the king had ridden away to the quest, and had left his squire behind him, which filled the young man with fear, and in his dream he set the saddle and bridle on his horse, and fastened his spurs, and girt on his sword, and galloped out of the castle after the king. He rode on a long space till he entered a thick forest, and there before him lay traces of the king's horse, and he followed till the marks of the hoofs ceased suddenly at some open ground, and he thought that the king had alighted there. On the right stood a chapel, and about it was a graveyard, and in the graveyard many coffins, and in his dream it seemed as if the king had entered the chapel, so the young man entered also. But no man did he behold, save a knight that lay dead upon a bier in the midst of the chapel, covered with a pall of rich silk, and 4 tapers in golden candlesticks were burning round him. The squire marveled to see the body lying there so lonely, with no one near it, and likewise that the king was nowhere to be seen. Then he took out one of the tall tapers, and hid the candlestick under his cloak, and rode away until he should find the king. on his journey through the forest, he was stopped by a man black and ill-favored, holding a large knife in his hand. "Ho! You that stand there, have you seen King Arthur?" asked the squire. "No, but I have met you, and I am glad thereof, for you have under your cloak one of the candlesticks of gold that was placed in honor of the knight who lies dead in the chapel. Give it to me, and I will carry it back. And if you do not this of your own will, I will make you." "By my faith," cried the squire, "I will never yield it to you. Rather will I carry it off and make a present of it to King Arthur." "You will pay for it dearly," answered the man, "if you yield it not up forthwith." To this the squire did not make answer, but dashed forward, thinking to pass him by. But the man thrust at him with his knife, and it entered his body up to the hilt. And when the squire dreamed this, he cried, "Help! Help! For I am a dead man!" As soon as the king and the queen heard that cry, they awoke from their sleep, and the chamberlain said, "Sir, you must be moving, for it is day." And the king rose and dressed himself and put on his shoes. Then the cry came again, "Fetch me a priest, for I die!" And the king ran at great speed into the hall, while the queen and the chamberlain followed him with torches and candles. "What aileth you?" asked the king of his squire, and the squire told him of all that he had dreamed. "Ha!" said the king, "is it then a dream?" "Yes, sir," answered the squire, "but it is a right foul dream for me, for right foully it hath come true." And he lifted his left arm and said, "Sir, look you here. Lo, here is the knife that was stuck in my side up to the haft." After that he drew forth the candlestick and showed it to the king. "Sir, for this candlestick that I present to you was I wounded to the death." The king took the candlestick in his hands and looked at it, and none so rich had he seen before, and he bade the queen look also. "Sir," said the squire again, "draw not forth the knife out of my body till I be shriven of the priest." So the king commanded that a priest should be sent for, and when the squire had confessed his sins, the king drew the knife out of the body, and the soul departed forthwith. Then the king grieved that the young man had come to his death in such strange wise, and ordered him a fair burial, and desired that the golden candlestick should be sent to the church of St. Paul in London, which at that time was newly built. After this, King Arthur would have none to go with him on his quest, and many strange adventures he achieved before he reached the chapel of St. Augustine, which was in the midst of the white forest. There he alighted from his horse, and sought to enter, but though there was neither door nor bar, he might not pass the threshold. But from without he heard wondrous voices singing, and saw a light shining brighter than any that he had seen before, and visions such as he scarcely dared to look upon. And he resolved greatly to amend his sins, and to bring peace and order into his kingdom. So he set forth, strengthened and comforted, and after divers more adventures, returned to his court. 2. The coming of the Holy Graal. It was on the eve of Pentecost that all the knights of the Table Round met together at Camelot, and a great feast was made ready for them. And as they sat at supper, they heard a loud noise as of the crashing of thunder, and it seemed as if the roof would fall on them. Then in the midst of the thunder there entered a sunbeam, brighter by 7 times than the brightest day, and its brightness was not of this world. The knights held their peace, but every man looked at his neighbor, and his countenance shone fairer than ever it had done before. As they sat dumb, for their tongues felt as if they could speak nothing, there floated in the hall the Holy Grail, and over it a veil of white samite, so that none might see it nor who bare it. But sweet odors filled the place, and every knight had set before him the food he loved best. And after that the holy vessel departed suddenly, they wist not where. When it had gone, their tongues were loosened, and the king gave thanks for the wonders that they had been permitted to see. After that he had finished, Sir Gawain stood up and vowed to depart the next morning in quest of the Holy Grail, and not to return until he had seen it. "But if after a year and a day I may not speed in my quest," said he, "I shall come again, for I shall know that the sight of it is not for me." And many of the knights there sitting swore a like vow. But King Arthur, when he heard this, was sore displeased. "Alas!" cried he unto Sir Gawain, "you have undone me by your vow, for through you is broken up the fairest fellowship and the truest of knighthood that ever the world saw, and when they have once departed they shall meet no more at the Table Round, for many shall die in the quest. It grieves me sore, for I have loved them as well as my own life." So he spoke, and paused, and tears came into his eyes. "Ah, Gawain, Gawain, you have set me in great sorrow." "Comfort yourself," said Sir Launcelot, "for we shall win for ourselves great honour, and much more than if we had died in any other wise, since die we must." But the king would not be comforted, and the queen and all the court were troubled also for the love which they had to these knights. Then the queen came to Sir Galahad, who was sitting among those knights, though younger he was than any of them, and asked him whence he came, and of what country, and if he was son to Sir Launcelot. And King Arthur did him great honour, and he rested him in his own bed. And next morning the king and queen went into the minster, and the knights followed them, dressed all in armour, save only their shields and their helmets. When the service was finished, the king would know how many of the fellowship had sworn to undertake the quest of the Grail, and they were counted and found to number 150. They bade farewell, and mounted their horses, and rode through the streets of Camelot, and there was weeping of both rich and poor, and the king could not speak for weeping. And at sunrise they all parted company with each other, and every knight took the way he best liked.